Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today we have listened to the comments and the questions from all our readers and from all our listeners, and we have brought somebody onto the show that has an expertise in the legal drama and the legal issues that surround the movement that is Airbnb. And this is great because law always is tricky. I mean, I'm an attorney, but I don't understand these issues. I haven't looked into them, and I have a lot of questions in this area. And so I'm so excited to have these guys on the show today. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Matt Staub and Nasser Pasha. Guys, welcome to the show.
How you doing? Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys. So before we jump, so these guys have all the answers with regards to what's going on, who's moving against Airbnb, what's sort of happening right now, and where things are moving. They're also going to opine a bit on condo associations, on the hotel industry, everything. It's going to be really great. Before we jump into the nitty-gritty, guys, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves, about your backgrounds, what you do, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start first. My name is Nasser Pasha. We're a business corporate law firm, Pasha Law. We're based out of San Diego, California. That's where Matt's enjoying his lifestyle right now. And we're also operating in Texas and New York as well. And we represent small, medium-sized businesses in various different issues. But Airbnb is something that we've been following quite a bit because we do our own podcast, and it's just a great legal issue that keeps coming up. So we're happy to be on.
Awesome. And Matt, why don't you give a little bit of your background as well?
Oh, yeah. So I've been with Pasha Law here for coming up on 2 years. Like Nasser said, we're a corporate law firm, dealing with small to medium-sized businesses. I also have some background in tax controversies and in estate planning. So I don't know how. I don't have I'm not a tax expert by any means. So once we get into the tax issues of this, I don't not necessarily expect too much, but I do have some tax background.
All right, that's awesome. By the way, I didn't actually know you were in San Diego. I'm in Los Angeles, so it's nice and early here, which is the way I like it. It's it's just a little bit past 7 a.m., so that's great. I actually began my legal career in Washington, D.C. I don't practice law anymore, but I was in D.C. for a bit and finally wisened up and came out to the West Coast, which I've been loving for the last 2.5 years. So that's great.
Good decision.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's get into it. Let's do it. So first of all, I've seen, we read articles all the time on the legal battles, on people getting evicted. So the first thing I want to know is what areas in the world, I mean, nationally and internationally, we can sort of split it into two separate topics, but where is Airbnb facing the most resistance?
Yeah, I think that the locations that have the most popular destinations, have a lot of regulatory framework when it comes to tourism and hotels, are the places that are having the most trouble here. Places like New York, San Francisco. Internationally too, I've heard different spots in like Barcelona and also Italy as well, I believe, where when you have people that are selling out their places, other industries such as hotels are losing business, and of course they have as a big money maker to some of these cities, they do have quite a bit of influence on the local legislation.
And so, what are these types of legislations that are coming in that are coming about, I mean, is it typically banning it altogether, or is it maybe levying some really, really hefty unfair taxes, or how do you see it manifesting?
I think in different ways. It kind of depends upon what's the blowback from it. I think New York has kind of gone the line that, okay, well, if you have to be licensed to do this kind of stuff, because you're basically acting like a hotel. And what that basically means is that we want you to pay a tax in order to do this, and we're losing money because of that. And of course, the hotel lobby is also complaining that they're losing business. So I think that is probably the most primary way. There are some things that I've seen where people are concerned about the safety of the tenants in the sense of the whole eviction process, because tenants do have some protections when, for example, as a guest in a hotel, you do have certain protections as to whether you overstay and so forth, and the regulatory framework around that, and then how that combines with basic landlord-tenant law is where it differs, and also that also adds to the complexity of those that actually rent out their pad. And
so now, when you're talking about the landlord-tenant law, are you saying protections from the renters? I'm sorry, from the short stay renters perspective, or from the owner/landlord's perspective?
I think both. I mean, it kind of depends. From my perspective, as we represent more on the business side of things, we kind of take the perspective of the landlord or the owner of the place. But generally, I think some of those landlord-tenant protections are for both. I mean, there's a classic case, Matt. We just covered it a few weeks ago, right?
Right.
Of some case in California where the tenant. In fact, this was I think it was pretty big news in your industry, as far as the tenant actually stayed over 30 days. And once that happens, then you actually have to go through the landlord-tenant eviction process in California to evict. Whereas if it was less than 30 days, that's not there. And of course, that's also for the protection of the landlord as well, to make sure that they're evicting properly and be able to have some kind of process to evict and also collect past due rent.
I see. And real quick, I want to talk about this tax that you mentioned in New York City that apparently the hotel industry has proposed, or perhaps some legislative members have proposed. What kind of a tax, if something like this is actually set and enforced, what kind of a tax can Airbnb hosts expect in New York City?
Yeah, well, so at least in New York, and I'm not sure about other cities as well, they've had this hotel tax, or whatever they want to call it. And these are all local taxes, not necessarily dealing with the IRS on a federal level, but it's essentially just a tax for the hospitality industry. So for places like hotels, and I'm guessing the people that are kind of driving this are, the owners of hotels and other big players in that field, because they're saying, look, it's unfair to us. We have to charge this. I think it's around 10, 11%, additional on top of what they charge. They're saying we have to charge this, and it's not fair that, these other people can just undercut that price and not have to pay that. So they need to be held to this level as well. So there's that tax. You could say there's the tax of, this isn't as big, but so just a business license as well. I mean, that's another thing that comes into play. But it's that hotel tax locally that's really the one that they have to be worried about.
And what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think that that's going to be a reality, or you think it's going to get shot down?
I think it's a reality. Like I was saying, the players in the hospitality industry are big, and I think they obviously have way more power than these small operations, or even the single operations that are trying to rent out rooms, on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. So I don't think it's something that's going to disappear. I mean, in my opinion, when someone wants to enforce a tax, it's very rare that it just disappears altogether or never gets enforced. So like I said, this is on the local level, so it's not nationwide, but I'd be pretty surprised if it just disappeared and these people didn't end up having to pay it.
Sure. So I know another issue that has come up a lot. Now this is a bit different from owners actually renting out condos that are theirs. So I know this has happened in San Francisco where you have renters, okay, they rent a unit and then they essentially sublet it on a short-term basis to Airbnb folks. Now what's been happening is there's a lot of people that because technically it's a violation of the lease in some cases. When it's a violation of the lease, the landlords immediately enforce it. And my understanding is that the reason why they do so is because a lot of these buildings in San Francisco are under rent control. And as you guys probably know, rent has just been skyrocketing out of control there. So there's a bit of a financial incentive to get people out so they can have fresh tenants and spike the rent. What are your thoughts on what's been happening in San Francisco as far as these evictions and etc.?
Yeah, I would say that's actually pretty common, even in the commercial leasing space, where if a landlord wants you out, they're going to enforce the lease to a T. And that's going to be pretty common. And as far as leases go, I think it's important for everyone to understand. And by the way, I think we didn't add the disclaimer. Obviously, we are lawyers, but please don't take this as legal advice. Every situation is different, of course, and please get independent counsel to verify everything here. But in general, when you have a lease, the default is that any contract is freely assignable, and in the sense that you can, when you're leasing a space, you can assign part of your rights into that contract to somebody else. However, virtually every lease has restrictions on assignment. So therefore, that default provision is no longer there. And so it requires usually the consent of the landlord to actually do those kind of things. So of course, the landlord has a financial incentive to do so and has a contractual right, has a right to enforce the contract accordingly.
Right. So it's very interesting. And of course that makes sense. You want to, at the end of the day, even if you're not in one of these localities, you want to do your best to follow what's stipulated in the lease. But I have been hearing a lot of cases, unfortunate cases of people being like, hey, I rented my place out, got evicted. And I guess it's unfortunate on both ends. Okay, so we've talked a little bit now about what's going on as far as the opposition to Airbnb. What I'd love to know is, what areas have you seen Airbnb and the short stay rental market embrace, or if that even exists? I was, as preparing for this, I was thinking about that to see if that's the case. Obviously, from our perspective, when we cover it, we're always looking for the legal issues and the legal disputes, not necessarily a legal harmony. I think there's maybe one city that I know of, Portland, which knowing the culture there is not too surprising, that they've embraced Airbnb, but for a financial incentive, because I believe there's still a tax involved in that, in the sense. So just compare it to New York and San Francisco, where there's this kind of hostile battle, where Portland's trying to embrace it at the same time, benefit from it as well. In that same token. And do you by chance know what the tax is that they've created in Portland, or that that they've enforced? No, I don't. I imagine, though, it has to be something different than what would be regularly imposed on a hotel. But Matt, I don't know if you read into that or not.
No, I'm not sure exactly. I know that it's a similar idea to what San Francisco and New York has done in terms of that additional tax on top of whatever their bill is, but I don't know what the amount is or what the specifics are.
Okay. So I've read basically, this isn't domestically, but internationally, there are a few places. I believe the UK is trying to now integrate, again, Airbnb into their economy, and I think they are creating some sort of a tax. Something like that is happening in Amsterdam as well, where they're allowing like a certain number of nights per month, something like that. So there are some places internationally that are making little steps in that direction, which to me I think is great, because I've written a book about Airbnb. I love it. I'm all about the sharing economy. But now, as we're talking about taxing and maybe sharing the wealth, a really interesting question popped up the other day. And let me give you a quick summary. So I have a buddy in New York, and he bought a condo in the Hell's Kitchen area a few years ago, and he began renting it out on Airbnb. Now, right, according to the rules in the condo association, he's not allowed to rent it out on Airbnb. But he did it anyways. He sort of did it surreptitiously, and he was making quite a bit of money. What ended up happening was the condo association, eventually they found out, I can't remember how, but they found out, and everybody was up in arms. They were very opposed to it. The general counsel of the condo association ended up writing him a letter saying, listen, either you stop what you're doing, send him a cease and desist letter, either you stop what you're doing or we are going to fine you $500 per day that your Airbnb business is ongoing. And I was thinking about that, and of course they were in their legal right to do that, to enforce that regulation, to enforce that clause in the agreement. But I was thinking, wow, that's just such a hard stance, and I understand that the tenants, again, maybe they're worried about safety or they don't want random people there. But I thought, okay, money's coming in, quite a bit of money is coming in. There's got to be some middle ground. There's got to be a way that the condo association can win while allowing this to go on. Have you guys thought about this, and what do you think? How can they coexist, or how can everybody be happy in a situation like this?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's take a look at just conceptually homeowners associations, condo associations, is that each of these associations have what are called CC&Rs, conditions, covenants, and restrictions, which is basically a contract with each of the homeowners, the condo owners, saying that, okay, if you're going to purchase this property, you're going to live by these rules and regulations. And these rules and regulations may be amended from time to time, usually by a board, which are elected by the homeowners, right? And everyone knows the craziness of HOAs and condo associations, how crazy they can be. But I think what you're alluding to is something interesting, because if there's a financial gain that the association itself can do to share some of the profits from the renting out, then I suppose there's something there. But I just don't see that happening personally, because the association itself is not, in the normal sense, a device to make a profit, to make money, right? And what are they going to do with that money? Are they going to disperse it around to all the other residents? And if that's the case, then how much is that really going to be? Is it really worth all that? The main purpose of these CC&Rs is to protect the so-called sanctity of the condo, the complex, and so forth, to have a certain environment that they're looking for. The same concept that in a neighborhood with an HOA, you can't leave a trailer on the driveway for too long, or can't have a basketball hoop. You know, people, as much as people bash these HOAs, people also like the benefits of it. So I would be very surprised if anything like that actually happens. It would be a very specific kind of culture of a building or of a condo complex that would apply, and I think that would be hard to find.
I see. Now, when I think one of the main concerns is that, right, you want to protect the sanctity of the condo building. I think maybe some people are also concerned about safety. Just curious, have you heard of any instances where the building has been jeopardized, or the area has been jeopardized because of an Airbnb guest, or maybe a short stay rental guest?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally heard any stories, but I would have to imagine that it happens. You know, I would have to think it's happened a decent amount. I mean, a small percent overall, but just think of the sheer amount of Airbnb rentals that have happened. There has to be, a decent amount of instances of that happening. And to speak on, I just wanted to go back with the condo issue real quick. I agree with Pasha a lot, wholeheartedly, just because if it's going to be profit sharing. So, what's preventing the person that's renting it out to say, well, actually I made zero profit because I got to pull in all these expenses. So after that, it ended up being zero. And even if there is a small amount of profit, it's, spread amongst all the different condo owners in the whole complex. It's going to be a very small amount for, having the detriment of having this safety issue. So it's, kind of going back on that question, answering this one, I can see safety being an issue, and it's probably not worth it for those people that own the condos to even get involved in it in the first place. That's my take for my experience living in condos and having other people that have had lots of problems with the HOAs and all that.
Okay, very interesting. Okay, so now with this changing legal landscape, what's going on in different cities, as a host and as a guest, I'd love to hear your take on both these, both perspectives. Should hosts and or guests be worried about using Airbnb for the time being? And if so, I mean, what are the concerns that they need to think about?
Yeah, so obviously hosts would need to be worried because that's all the problems that we've been discussing and that you read in the news. If you're not doing it right, if you're doing it illegally, there's obviously going to be issues. I think in New York, they've even, the Attorney General stepped in and supposedly they're going to go through and find all the people that have been renting these out illegally, and they're going to go after them. Supposedly, who knows what's actually going to happen. On the guest side, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some sort of something to worry about, but I mean, it's pretty minimal, I think. And as we spoke earlier, there's that issue, and there was the case here in California with the guy who rented for, I think, 44 days, and once he hit that 30-day mark, he had all the rights to kind of just squat there and stay there. So there's definitely an advantage, or I guess he has the leverage in that case from the rental side. So I would definitely think that the hosts have more to worry about if you're looking, through that lens.
Yeah, I think in fact, from a guest perspective, the only thing I can think of is if you're renting from basically a tenant, basically a subtenant, and the master landlord is in the middle of an eviction process because the tenant violated the lease, and you happen to be there as a guest during that time. But other than that, I don't see that actually manifesting into any issue, because generally, besides California being one of the most tenant-friendly states, pretty much every state as well has more tenant-friendly laws than landlord.
So what can you do as a host? Let's say you still want to pursue this for some extra cash. I mean, what can you do as a host to insulate yourself, or best insulate yourself from what's going on right now?
I don't think anyone's going to like what I have to say, because I don't think anyone does it. Because the reality is that the most proper way to do it is go through your landlord, get consent. And a lot of times it requires written consent if you're having any guests stay over a certain period of time. And those are usually specified in the lease itself. And then on top of that, if you're in a city or locality that this is a regulated activity for which you need a license or needs to be taxed, then you need to go through that proper process to do that. Of course, who's going to do that in New York and San Francisco? But that's the proper way, I think.
No, I think that's great advice, and hopefully there will be some listeners out there who will take heed of what you guys are saying, because at the end of the day, that's what you guys are here for, to provide the good advice to keep people safe and out of trouble and problem free. So I think that's excellent. Maybe it's a little bit of an added burden, but that's why we have attorneys around to help guide people. So that's really helpful. All right, so as you've seen everything change, what's your prediction 5 years from now? Will there be an Airbnb? How big will it be? Will there be harmony between short stay rentals and hotels? Just give us your thoughts.
My thought is this, and maybe Pasha and I might differ. I have no idea. We didn't discuss, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of new company, essentially a competitor of Airbnb, emerge and just kind of take in. Basically, there could be someone sitting there right now, kind of taking in everything that's happening, seeing. I don't want to say necessarily the mistakes that Airbnb is making, but just seeing what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and come in and do all of this better and have a way that complies with the laws a lot better. I mean, I don't know if you've been on the Airbnb website in terms of what they give. There's a page on there, and the question is, what legal and regulatory issues should I consider before hosting on Airbnb? And I mean, it wouldn't even fill one page of a Word document. It's very short. It's very not helpful and even what's there is not even helpful. It just says, talk to somebody that knows what they're doing, more or less. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for somebody to step in and, kind of be a very big competitor of Airbnb. At the same time, I think as time progresses, we're going to see more and more cities, implement legislation that's going to prevent or at least make it very difficult to have people rent out their spaces, at least in terms of the short-term rental. So, under 30 days.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I think the biggest ally that Airbnb has are the other companies that are in the sharing economy, or even other disruptors. I think Uber and Lyft and even Tesla, who have all been disruptors in the industry that are facing legal challenges on a local level. This is not something that can be fixed on a federal level. This is on a case-by-case basis. And one thing you'll notice that for the cities that are successful, I should say, for the locations that these companies are successful in, are those cities where it becomes popular enough that there's no alternative, that people want some kind of Uber system for their taxi. People want to buy directly from the dealer, and in that way, the local legislature overcomes some of the lobbyist groups that are preventing them from doing that. And so, in the same token, I also agree with Matt that I think in some cases you may see hotels themselves actually adjusting to the Airbnb model somehow and entering into that space. Or then you may find cities like Portland which will embrace it. And so I think it'll be kind of a case-by-case basis. And if and when it becomes even more popular than it is, not that it's not popular now, then the legislation will be more favorable, because the legislators will be like, hey, well, this is popular. Let's try to tax it. Let's just license it, just like they've done in Uber in some cities. So now Uber can actually operate freely, and Tesla, they can actually get taxed accordingly, so that they can sell their cars directly to the consumer instead of going through a dealership. And so I think those are two industries, as well as others that I'm probably not thinking of, that can really tell us where Airbnb is going.
That's such a great point. That's exactly right. If you once the consumers want it badly enough, then they can have sort of opposing pressure from the lobbyists, and then they can sort of reach some middle ground and some harmony. Guys, it's been a real pleasure to have both of you on the show. So much awesome information has been given out, and I've learned a lot, so I really thank you guys for being here. You guys have to tell us how people can contact you if they have any sort of legal questions surrounding short stay rentals or anything else. So how do people get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, we do our own podcast. It's Legally Sound. What's it, Matt? I forgot already.
Yeah, Legally Sound Smart Business. Very long name.
Yeah, it's legallysoundsmartbusiness.com. We actually were able to secure that domain name, even though it's one of the longest domain names in the internet. But yeah, so you can actually ask, send in some questions there, and we'll choose some of them and put it on our podcast as well. And there's a contact form and all that. And of course, we have a bunch of Twitter and Facebook and social media stuff too. I think one of them is for Twitter is Ask Biz Law, AskBizLaw, for those that need a dictionary to spell that.
Yeah, I believe that's the official dictionary spelling, so it should be in there somewhere.
Correct.
All right, so listen. All this information is going to be in the show notes. So for anybody who didn't get that, you can check out the show notes. Show notes can be found at www.getpaidforyourpad.com/podcast. And for anybody who's interested to learn more on how to be an awesome host and how to maximize profits from their Airbnb listing, you can check out the first 3 chapters of our book for free at getpaidforyourpad.com. Also, our book is now live on Kindle for $9.97. You just go to Amazon and search for Get Paid for Your Pad. Right, same name. Guys, again, thank you, and that wraps another episode. New episodes come out every Monday and Thursday. See you next time. Take care.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.